Arama kurtarma çalışması yapan ekipler de bu noktada. Evet, bina yıkılıyor şu anda. Bir bina daha yıkıldı. Evet, yan tarafında. Arama kurtarma ekipleri de o noktadan şimdi uzaklaşıyorlar. Bina alıyorlar. Düşmemeleri için ekipler bölgeyi boşaltıyor. Şu anda o yeni bina için, çöken yeni bina için.
A disaster can happen at any moment. You never know when. We can go without food for weeks, but water, that's a different thing. Are you prepared? Do you have a water supply? Well, that's what this video is going to take a look at.
So we're going to be doing something a little bit embarrassing on my part. I think my wife would just be absolutely horrified with embarrassment of going through the house. I'm in the middle of doing a bunch of construction projects. We're getting ready to sell the house, and so the house is kind of torn apart. We're going to take an impromptu inventory of all the available water. And maybe you guys should do the same thing. So, of how much water you have right now. So, I got a case of water here, so I got one case here. Let's see, back in here, I got 1, 2, 3, 4 more cases. And this is where good intentions go to die. I have 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I have all these water containers up here on my refrigerator, but they are empty. I've not had a chance yet to fill them, and that's what I call good intentions. My wife buys these cube containers all the time when she goes shopping, but if you don't have a place to put them, what good are they? And then let's see, down here, I got 1, 2, 3, I got 3 more cases of water down here. This is a 55-gallon barrel for water, and I've been using this to put my tile saw on as I've been doing the tiles of my floor in my living room and kitchen. Down in the basement, so I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more cases of water, and then I have the obligatory gallons of water that like everyone has in their house that used to be cranberry juice or something else. So I have these scattered around here. And then let's see, I have some more of these cubes. These are actually full, so I got 1, 2, 3 of these cubes here. Let's go through over here. And I have more of these cubes. Now these cubes are actually full. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Let's see what I got back behind here. Nothing down there. So I got 23 of the 5-gallon cubes. And you can see right here, I got some more cubes that my wife has bought. That there's a sitting there on top of a Halloween skeleton. Let's see, what else do I have? Just more stuff all over the place. You can see where I have some of my freeze-dried stuff back there. My daughter is getting ready to move, and that's why the basement's kind of squampus right here. I have totes down here with freeze-dried food, more freeze-dried food. You can see way in the back over there, more pink totes of freeze-dried food, but that is not water. And if I go out here on to the deck, you can see more good intentions. I got 2 more barrels right here that are absolutely empty. So I have 2 empty 55-gallon barrels that are not going to do me any good in an emergency. Now, the only thing about these barrels, when they are full of water, they're just shy of about 500 pounds of weight. So once these barrels are full, they're not going anywhere. I then have my pond, which is estimated at about 1,500 gallons. Now, I can't drink this water right out of the pond. I'd have to filter it or boil it. But this would be another source of water in case of an emergency. And then just about 150 yards away from my house, I have this small little creek that would be a source of fresh water if I needed it. So I'm very fortunate to have all these resources close to my house. Now just imagine if you live in Los Angeles or in New York City, and if you ran out of water, you wouldn't have nearly these resources. And that's why it's so important to have a water supply that you'd be able to draw from in case of an emergency. I am fortunate to have a lot of land. Well, I don't know what you call a lot of land, but I have an acre lot that my house is built on. And down here I have a pretty good sized garden, and I have a nice little orchard. I have apples, and I have peaches, I have cherries, I have plums, and all kinds of fruits down here that you could add to your inventory because they do contain moisture. Now they recommend that, or they do require, that the human body needs about 3 quarts of water every day. And that's a combination of moisture that could be from water directly, or it could be from food that you eat, including fruits and vegetables. And having a garden with all sorts of produce, that really does add to your inventory of water in an indirect way. So having a garden and an orchard and a pond is just other different sources of having moisture. And because I do have land, I could always build myself a solar still. And if you haven't heard of a solar still, I am going to demonstrate what a solar still is and how it can work 2 different ways. But that is also another source of water. It's another way of how you can purify water. The success of a solar still depends on a couple of issues here. On how much moisture the ground's going to have, and also how much sunlight is going to be on the ground. Because as the sunlight bakes the ground, it's going to cause the ground to heat up and the moisture to condensate up against the plastic. And then of course that condensation is going to come down off the plastic into your holding vessel. So the more moisture in the ground, the better success the solar still is going to be. Once your bowl has been shaped, the most important part is going to be the center of the bowl. And this is going to be the lowest part. This is where your water is going to accumulate. So this is my setup. I have my bowl inside the cavity here to collect the water. I have a vinyl tube going into the bottom of the hole. I have a piece of duct tape holding everything into place. Now I do have a piece of this fabric. This fabric is called tulle or tulle, however you want to pronounce it. It's kind of like a mesh netting type of material. You can also use cheesecloth, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to wrap this around the bowl. Basically, this will keep any organics or any critters that might wander in or come into contact with my bowl, just to kind of keep them out of there so they don't get into my water. But this will allow any water to drip right through it into my bowl below. It's just a little bit of safety precaution. If you don't have any material or you don't have any cheesecloth, well, that's fine. It'll just be maybe some extra protein. And then we're going to take my plastic and cover the hole and weigh down the sides with rocks, dirt, logs, anything you can find that will hold the plastic into place. Now what I'm going to do before I close all this up, and for filming purposes, I'm going to put a single drop of red food coloring in the bowl so it'll be easier to see the water as it accumulates. And then I can see through the plastic where my bowl is. I'm going to take a single nice round smooth rock and I'm going to put it right smack in the middle. And I want to make sure I have enough plastic that this will be the focal point. I'm going to push on this just a little bit to force it to be a conical shape. Just like that, because this is where, when all the condensation comes up on the plastic and runs down, it'll drip right inside my bowl. So I'll have my tube sitting right here, all coiled up, that we'll use to access the water with. And we'll go ahead and give this a day or so to see how much water we accumulate. It's been less than 24 hours. You can see all the condensation on the back of the plastic. You can see the condensation trails. If I tap the plastic, you can see the condensation running down to the center of the plastic and dropping down into the bowl underneath. And if you can see that the food coloring that was down below is now pink, and it looks like there's probably about maybe almost an inch of liquid in my bowl now underneath. And that's been about a 24-hour period. It's a little bit forecast right now, and I'm hoping it doesn't rain, because if it does rain, it's going to fill this little indentation up and spoil my little experiment here. Now, if I'm real careful, if I remove these rocks, I may be able to fold some of this plastic back, and we can actually see how we're doing underneath to see how this experiment is going. Like I said, it might be raining here in just a moment, so we'll just kind of fold this back here. And you can see how wet this plastic is from all the condensation. You can see that the ground here is quite dark. So we'll take off this fabric material, and sure enough, by doing that, I got a bunch of dirt in here, but you can see that I have about an inch. I had about an inch of water in there in a 24-hour period, and I spoiled the water by doing that. But in about an inch of water, that looks like maybe about, a little bit more than a cup of water. So if this soil was really wet with moisture, and if it was a nice sunny day, we'd get a higher yield of water. But this is just an idea of what you can do if you need to get water in an emergency by making a solar still. And this water that we pulled out of the soil would be absolutely fit to drink. It would be distilled water, free of any calcium or any of other types of minerals that would be like in tap water. This would be distilled water that would be fit to drink or do anything else you wanted with it, with no minerals whatsoever in the water. Now, if you wanted to get access to your water, you wouldn't do what I just did by pulling back this plastic. You'd get access to your water by leaving the plastic in place and sucking the water out with your mouth, or by using a hand pump. So you just basically would suck the water out with the holes like this. And that's how you'd gain access to the water. Like so. And then you would just leave the solar still in place, and either each day or a couple of times a day you would be able to have access to your water. So a solar still would be good for days, weeks, months. The solar still would continue to work. Why not just gather your water supply from your roof through the rain gutter? Good question. In the 18 years I've been living here, I have never cleaned out my rain gutters. That's because my house is fairly tall and I don't have any trees to blow leaves into them. But for those who have cleaned out your rain gutters, you know what I'm talking about. There's leaves and all kind of debris. And plus, your roof is a perfect collection point for bird poop, which carries salmonella. Plus, roofs, being the shingles made out of asphalt, a petroleum product, well, when it rains, the rain is going to pick up the bird poop. It's going to pick up some of the byproducts of the petroleum that the shingles are made out of. It's going to pick up leaves and all sorts of debris, and it's going to bring them all down into your rain gutter, and it's going to wash them all down into the rain gutter, down to where you're going to collect your water. Now, rain gutter water will be great for gardens and such, and you can probably collect it and send it through a purifying device and use it that way. But I would just caution you that rain gutter water is probably not the best way of collecting your culinary drinking water. Now, where else do you have water? Yeah, you got water down in there, but that water is pretty much contaminated already. But what about water down in here? That water is relatively clean water until it flows into the toilet bowl. So you do have 2 or 3 gallons of water there if it really came critical. How about this tank right here, your hot water heater? Well, depending on the size of your hot water heater, you'll have 30 to 40 gallons of water right here. All you need to do is isolate the valves up here to keep any contaminated water from flowing in from your service connections, and almost everyone will have a drain connection down here that you'll have access to be able to drain the water into a container, and you have potable water right here that's available to you. Now, this might be getting a little bit too technical, but I have a sprinkler system here, and all the sprinkler system I have here is made out of 20 zones for my acre piece of property, and those 20 zones have a lot of pipe that's buried all underneath my yard. And if I was careful enough, I'd be able to drain those 20 zones and capture several gallons of water. And, you know, that might be an idea, but hey, when it comes to drinking water, that is another source of water, your sprinkler system, if you can drain it and collect it somehow. So this is our rain catcher. It's a piece of plastic. This piece of plastic is 10 feet by 10 feet, and it is secured to a tree over here, and then over to a fence here, fence over there, and over here to another fence. And in the center you can see I have some rocks there, my guide string going down to a bucket. So we just have to wait for the forecast to have some rain, which will be later on this afternoon, and we'll see how it will work. In the center of the plastic, I used a razor blade and cut these little marks right here that will allow the rain to come through to the other side. Now, through one of these little openings, I'm going to go ahead and fish through some of this paracord, and this will help the drips enter the bucket. So all the drips underneath will fall to the lowest point, hit the paracord, and will go ahead and run down the paracord into the bucket below. And to cause the funneling effect, I got some smooth, clean stones that we're going to place right here in the middle that will help make this the lowest point. So all the rainwater will come to this lowest point through the holes to the paracord to the bucket below. Well, I wouldn't say we're getting a downpour, but we're getting a pretty good sprinkling. And you can see the water coming here, flowing down into our bucket. Now, a few drawbacks I've had is the wind, because the wind can pick this up and move things all over the place. So that is one drawback. But you can see in the short time I've been collecting this, which has been about 10 minutes, I have 2.5 gallons of rainwater here, and it's coming out pretty good. So this is probably one of your best ways of gathering water. Now, the question is, who owns the rainwater? And we're going to get into that subject next.
It is legal to collect water in every state in the Union. There are 17 states, however, that have some type of restriction on water collection. Colorado has the most strictest restrictions at 110 gallons per year. The state I live in restricts water collection to 1,500 gallons. There are several websites you can go to that will tell you what kind of restrictions you may or may not have. Several states have no restrictions and will actually provide you with some funds to purchase rainwater collecting equipment. So go to the web, do your research, and you can find out what your state restrictions may have in regards to rainwater harvesting. Thinking about storage water, here's something else to think about. Not only do we need 3.2 quarts of water to survive with, but what about water to cook with? I have 1,565 gallon bags full of food, and each bag is going to take about a pint to a quart of water to rehydrate. So doing the calculations, I'm going to need about 391 gallons of water to rehydrate the freeze-dried food that I have in storage. So I'm going to need a whole lot of water to be able to cook with, let alone water to drink to survive. So when you think about water storage, you're also going to have to think about storage water to be able to cook all your food. So that's one other thing that you'll have to prepare for, is cooking water to rehydrate your freeze-dried food.
We can go days without food, but we can generally only live about 3 days without water. Water is an important part of food storage, so I would suggest you think now about your water supply rather than when an emergency exists. We've all seen the news reports of people waiting in line for cases of water after disaster strikes. So now is the time to think about water. There's a popular saying of water, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink, and that's usually what happens when there's a disaster. Having a supply of drinkable water is something we usually miss and don't think about until it's too late. So I hope we think about getting a supply of water now before it's too late. I'd like to thank you for your time. Please subscribe, and I will send you another video soon. Thank you.